Right, my God. Watching Erin Blanchfield was like watching an amateur try to box in MMA. Like, who's worse at boxing, CM Punk or Blanchfield? I'm joking, but Blanchfield, for me, she was way too overhyped going into this fight, even by me. For example, her striking is very amateur, but it works against these WMMA fighters who haven't got that good fight IQ when it comes to boxing, because all she does is, Juliana Pena style, run forward and throw the 1-2. And that is so predictable to read. So, of course, when she comes up against a person who can do kickboxing, that is easy for them. She only had to fight with one hand. Imagine, you're using both hands to strike, running with your chin up in the air, trying to throw 1-2, and you've got your opponent pretty much throwing a jab, check hooking you, circling out, and side kicking you. That's all she had to do. It was so repetitive. And yeah, she mixed up the variation of when she did it, but that was because Erin Blanchfield was just predictable. It was like watching Darren Till 1-2, 1-2, but obviously Darren Till's a far superior striker than her. But I'm just giving you an analogy of how she was boxing, like just one-dimensional. And her wrestling as well. I've got to say this about Blanchfield. I'm sorry, but her wrestling is not amazing. What is good is her control, because in her last two fights, she has not got a takedown. Imagine, Manon Fiorot, of all people, took her down. And who would have predicted that she would have got a takedown over Erin Blanchfield? You wouldn't. You just wouldn't expect that. Maybe because she was stronger than her, and Erin Blanchfield, she hasn't really had to deal with people constantly taking her down over and over and over again. Apart from, you could argue, the JJ Aldrich fight. But even then, she won that fight. But I'm just saying, she has shown now, like when we're talking about these fights with Valentina Shevchenko and stuff, I'm starting to think she's not ready. The only way she could win that fight against Valentina Shevchenko is the way how Grasso did it. If she throws those spinning back kicks and gives away her back, because I don't see her taking down someone like Shevchenko and bullying her in the ground. Because I think, you know how Manon Fiorot was boxing just off one hand? Valentina will come out with these like slick combos, these body kicks. Like, I know I said about those jumping body kicks, I wouldn't advise her to, but she's going to be dangerous with the kickboxing against Blanchfield, who could arguably KO her. She probably wouldn't, but there's a possibility that that could happen. And for me, Erin Blanchfield, she's not a finished fighter, but she's just showed how amateur her striking can be. And she's got great cardio, don't get me wrong, she can keep going, but she becomes a punching bag because she just can't adapt. So yeah, Manon Fiorot, underrated. And I believe she's more of a problem now to someone like Valentina Shevchenko, because she can match the boxing. Maybe she's not completely at her level yet, but she has got good striking that could compete with her. Bruno Silva against Chris Weidman. Bruno Silva just can't help but be a meme. And about the eye pokes, 100% Chris Weidman should have had a point taken away from him earlier on, because it happened more than once and there was no point. But look who was the referee. It was that clown. The people who are calling him the roided up bodybuilder, or whatever you want to call him, who we'll talk about more in the next few fights. But it should be a no contest. I know what they did here with, like, they gave the decision and he was probably en route to winning a decision. But when you eye poke the guy so many times and you should have lost the point, and because you did it here as well, which then led to a fight ending sequence, it probably should be not even a unanimous decision win, because the point should have been taken earlier, which would have meant that the scorecards would be completely different. And in that round, okay, he was looking good. He dropped him. But I believe he went down, not just because of the punch, it was the eye poke. He's taken damage from that, so he's gone down, thinking the referee's going to do something. He doesn't realise that he's been eye poked, and then he takes a beating on the ground, and he stops the fight, and the referee has probably got no idea what's happened, so he has to wait for these officials to review it. But apart from that, Bruno Silva's either sharp, or just looks like he's fighting like he's 50 years of age, for example. Weidman's 39 years of age. And it just reminded me of the Gerald Meerschaert against Bruno Silva, where you've got the guy who's out of their prime, well, not Jared Mearshart, but he's like not a striker predominantly. Chris Weidman's more of a wrestler, but can strike. But Bruno Silva's meant to be this dangerous, powerful striker, which he's meant to be like Alex Pereira. He fought him. He went toe-to-toe with him on the feet, no problem. Chris Weidman made Bruno Silva look silly at times, with like a flurry of punches. Like Alex Pereira didn't look like he was going to knock him out. He looked like he was winning the fight, but it didn't look like he was going to knock him out in the fight. Whereas you have Chris Weidman, and this is why MMA math is just, I say it all the time, but it just shows itself all the time. And Bruno Silva gets beaten up. Maybe he was worrying about the threat of takedown because you saw Weidman throwing a lot of these teep kicks to the body, and Bruno Silva looked scared to like throw something really wild from like a hook. Like he'd throw straight punches because he knows if he throws straight punches and Weidman throws a kick, he could catch him off balance, but he wasn't really looking for those massive hooks that open up his body completely. But Buckley versus Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque with this fight made me put my hands on my head. I was like, do you want to be there? Because the boxing wasn't really there. It was mainly staying on the outside, looking to throw kicks. And then, you know when you watch a fight, sometimes you can get a feeling that a fight is going to get knocked out. And I had that feeling about Vicente Luque during that fight because you had Buckley doing the most unorthodox moves, like he was Deontay Wilder doing a Euro step basketball move into like a hook. His setups are really unconventional. It reminds me a bit like Jeremiah Wells. But it seems weird that Buckley now is a ranked welterweight. Like Buckley's decent, he's got power, but I don't think of him as like a guy who would be number 11 ranked. It's making me think, I do want to see him fight like Jeremiah Wells. That would be a very explosive fight that would end with a finish. But he's not going to want to fight lower down. Why would he do that? That would just be a low IQ, brain damage move. So he's probably going to look at fighting anyone just his ranking or above. So who would I pick Buckley to fight next? I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him fight a guy like Michael Venom Page, but I do think he'd make him look silly. He would get beaten up like how he got beaten up against Nassourdine Imavov. It would be the same type of fight. Because with Buckley, if you jump into the pocket, look at Kevin Holland, the way he tried to get him with his setups. Like just not a proper setup, but just a lunge in. He'll get KO'd. I could really see that happening if they ever fought. And I know you might feel like MVP hasn't knocked anyone out in the UFC, but he's had one fight. And I do think Buckley, the way he jumps into range, and he was missing a few times at Luque, but he did catch him a few times, and it looked like he was going to get knocked down. Like there was one moment where he was like off balance from a shot, and he went down to his knee, and it looked like he got dropped, but I think it was like a loss of balance thing. But he was looking a bit shaky in there, and then going for a takedown, pulling guard. This is where I thought he quit, because he's failed to take down, so he's like, let me just pull guard. And when he pulls guard, he doesn't look to be active off his back. He just immediately shells up. And what fighter does that? Like, he didn't take like a massive shot from the takedown. That's what confuses me. Like, he tried to pull the guard. He got the pull guard. But then immediately is shelling up like he's been hit with a massive shot, which he didn't. And then there was no pushing on the hips to try and get a triangle choke. You knew the fight was over from the minute he was covering up, because he wasn't looking to do anything but looked like he wanted to get out of that fight and just let Buckley finish him, because he didn't do any punch, no up kick, no nothing. No shrimping, no nothing. He just took the beating and let it happen. So Buckley, it feels weird to say that he's a ranked number 11 welterweight, but I think they're the type of fights we've got to look at doing with him at this point. Michael Venom Page, Kevin Holland rematch, or if you want to give him a push, Jeff Neal, but I think that'd be a dangerous fight for him. But not Stephen Thompson. He would make Buckley look silly. But anyways, Sultan Ruziboev versus Adrikas Dumas. He looks like, at middleweight, quite dangerous. But I don't think he'll be like a champion. Like, he's had a lengthy career already. You would have thought he was a veteran. He's not in the UFC, but he looks experienced. He knows what he's doing. Middleweight's got a lot of strikers. He could do well in this division. And I don't want to get Abbas Magomedov killed, but I think he needs to fight a guy like Sultan Ruziboev. That's an entertaining matchup because they're both guys who like to swing straight from the start. Well, not even swing for Sultan, but they like to trade in the pocket and get into these exchanges. Whereas Adrikas Dumas, he's a very gun-shy fighter at times. Like, he looks it now. Before the UFC, no. But in the UFC, yes. And he did get eye-poked. And I'm hearing a lot of people say, because I believe there's a case going on about domestic abuse, which, if it's true, and like 100% true, he's been convicted of it, if it comes out, then that's bad. But just because that's happened, it doesn't mean we can't say it was an eye poke, because it was an eye poke. It was just a delayed reaction where it only sent a signal to his brain when they were at range. And then you've got an Aslan Rubiev, he just jumps on it. And I mean, I don't blame him. In that moment, you think you've hurt him, so you jump on him. You're not thinking at that point. But I have to sit here and say, that also was an eye poke. And I'm surprised the referee didn't review that, but they reviewed the Weidman. But the Weidman was worse because it was 2 and he did it multiple times. This was like an accident, but then he weren't looking and then got chinned. Njokuani versus McKee. This fight was the worst possible fight you could add on the main card. In terms of how it ended up playing out, like on paper, this should have had a knockout written all over it. McKee can be quite chinny from what I've seen. He's 0-4 in the UFC. I hope he don't get cut. He's had like matchups that were possible to win, but maybe he's just not this level. But I want to see him have one more chance. If he bottles that next chance out, be gone with him. But I would give him that. And Njokuani, he come out with a different type of style. There was no boxing. There was none of the elbows. It was mainly from the start just a leg kicking, trying to make that leg red, which he did. And then round 2, he was trying to create distance, try and land a knee, and just fight him at range and grab hold of him and try and clinch. Same with McKee. He was just looking to clinch as well. It was like a hugging battle. And it took him a while to separate them from the cage. And I don't know why, because there was just nothing going on. But for me, this fight, it was just not entertaining. It really weren't. Emmers versus Landwehr. That fight was probably... You got the performance of the night bonus, but it was one of the most interesting ones to watch because, I feel like a fool. You can go back and look at the predictions, but I said 30-27 Emmers. That is horrific when I look back at that now. But I see why I said that, because he beat Corey Sanhagen earlier on back in the day. His boxing's quite technical. He was beating up Landwehr early. I believe he dropped him early. He cut open his forehead because he's got a lot of power, but he's also very fast as well, and he's got very good range. But I'm starting to think his chin isn't that good. And there was just something telling me whilst that fight was going on, he was going to bottle that fight because he was exchanging and throwing a lot early. Well, not exchanging, but he was throwing a lot early. Even working the body, that's a good investment against Landwehr. But when you throw with every shot with power, and you've got a guy who's just walking you down, he doesn't care what punch you hit him with, he's just going to be in your face. You're going to have to knock him out to finish him, and he doesn't get knocked out. He's going to get through your defence, and he was starting to find a jab and find his uppercut through the guard. And that's what knocks him out cold. And it was actually unfortunate because Emmers started off much better and it looked like he was probably going to win. But then he was struggling to deal with the pressure of him. And Landwehr, please put him on a main card next. You don't have to give him a main event. They probably wouldn't for a long time. But please put him on a main card with a crowd. If you put him on a main card with a crowd, he thrives off the crowd. He's just one of them fighters who performs there compared to just sticking him in the apex, which he can perform in, but not to the same degree of when there's a proper crowd there. So for me, Landwehr, I don't want to see him fight Kyle Nelson. I want to see him fight Steve Garcia. That would be a perfect fight. You've got 2 guys who like to throw with intent. Steve Garcia's got the power advantage, but there's the factor that he will be in your face yet again, and I would like to see how Steve Garcia would deal with a guy like that. He's just going to keep pushing no matter what shot you hit him with. And Steve Garcia is one of the hardest hitting featherweights out there. Like, he is extremely powerful when he touches you. And I know that's like a bold claim. I'm not saying he's one of the best featherweights, that would be dumb, but he's got extremely good power. And I think he could be a problem for a guy like that. So I think that's the type of fight they should do. It'd be a stand-up battle, and it would be whoever's got the best cardio and chin. Julio Arce versus Herbert Burns. I was about to say Herbert Burns' brother. Herbert is his brother. Herbert Burns, for me, I have no idea how he beat Landwehr. He is so predictable of what he's going to do. He's just looking to clinch you against the cage and bring you down. Arce's got 2 good takedown defense in jiu-jitsu. to have a guy like Herbert Burns do that too. So he's able to just land that knee on him, put him down, and outbox him on the feet. And because he was cheating, point deduction for Herbert Burns. But anyways, that's all I've got to really say. I weren't really enjoying that fight the most. The fight with Iber Aslan and Anton Turkalj II, that was a good fight, but again, we had the mean referee, who, in my opinion, should have let that fight play out. And I did pick Iber Aslan to win the fight. And I'm surprised he did it in the third round, because the first round he started really bad. You had Anton Turkalj II just out jabbing him and just doing everything on the back foot with pretty much better success than Iber Aslan. He was able to jab him to the point where he cut open his eye. But the one thing that Turkalj II does is sometimes he can throw too much, and throwing too much gets him caught. And he doesn't mind standing there and banging in the pocket, not like that. But yeah, he likes to pretty much trade. We had a Max Holloway-Lamas moment between the two where they both started swinging in the pocket. And Anton Turkalj II was always getting the worst of the exchanges. And Iber Aslan as well, I will say, I don't think he's that good, if I'm really honest with you. Yeah, he got the KO, but again, he's like this really big guy who's got loads of muscles, but he gasses quite a lot. He did push through it here, but he was still gassing. His technique isn't that good. He just swings trying to knock you out. And yeah, at least he got the knockout, but that referee, I'm surprised he kept his job after that. He could have done much better and just waited, but again, I said he wants to be the man of the match. I have no idea again. Why did I pick Petroski? Malkoun's fought better competition than him. When Petroski stepped up to fight harder, competition, he's always struggled. Jacob Malkoun's always put a good account of himself up. Like, he dealt with Brendan Allen quite well in terms of, I don't think he won the fight, but some people would say there's an argument for it. He tends to grapple against his opponents well. He did struggle at taking him down, Petroski, and he did get dropped earlier on, but that's irrelevant because he looked better than Petroski. Petroski first round looked like he was going to get finished because he just looked a bit uncoordinated, and he's just like an overhand right merchant. And the Cody Brundage fight was just poor fight IQ. Like, he wasn't using his brain in terms of with what not to do. But his striking, for me, it's not that great, but it's good enough to beat Petroski. And it was just the weirdest knockout I've ever seen. I thought he got knocked out by air at first. He goes for a takedown. It's like the hip glitches, Drozen, speaking Scottish, and just throws himself down to the floor. Well, obviously, he didn't throw himself because he was knocked out, but you know what I mean. He got chinned by going for a takedown. It weren't even like a flying knee, like Jorge Masvidal Ben Askren. It was literally, I went for a takedown, my body shut down. Disappointing. The Irish guy, Callahan Loughran, against Andrew Pacheco. I had high hopes for this guy. He won, but he's very open to get hit on the feet because he doesn't really move his head, and you can just throw like straight punches at him and they should land. And he didn't use the grappling enough, in my opinion. I know he did it, but I think he should have done it from round one and just looked to take him down, especially after that performance which he had on his debut. And I know there was a lot of changes that happened and stuff, but he's got a good chin, but that's all I can say about him. So in general, the card was alright, apart from the main event that just was not competitive and just a simple jab, check hook, kick setup over and over again. So yeah, thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.